this tutorial series, we'll be looking at CSS. And what is CSS? CSS actually stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It is used to control the presentation of the HTML element, also for laying out the HTML web page, and you can also use to style the font, the color, and any other elements within the web page. So now, how do we actually add CSS to our HTML document? So I've actually created this basic HTML page. We have the header. Within the header, I have the H1. Then I have the section here. Then I give it the header ID. We have the hero class here. We have the class for this text box, for this box here, this div, and we have other content elements within it. Okay, now, so how do we add CSS to our HTML document? Number one, we have inline CSS, we have internal CSS, we also have external CSS. So now, how is inline CSS used on the HTML document? It's when you want to add inline CSS to the HTML document, you use the style attribute. You specify the style attribute within the opening tag of the HTML element. So now, having specified the style, then the attributes, the value of this attribute, of this style attribute, now that is the CSS property that we actually want to apply on this particular element. So here let's say for instance I want to change the background of this particular header element here. Then I'll specify the background property, background color property here. Now, in what color do I want to? Let's say I want the color to be red, for instance. Now, okay, so I've actually used inline CSS now, okay, to specify the background color for this particular element. So if I should open it up in my browser, I'm using live server. Can you see now? So the background color has actually changed to red. If I also want to change the color of the text within the element, that is the H1, I can also specify the color here. That means I have to terminate this one with semicolon, then color, specify the color property, and here, then what color? Let's say I want to change it to something like white. So if you check it out, you see the color has changed to white. So that is how to add inline CSS to the HTML document. Though in some cases this could be useful, but it's not always the best way to actually add CSS to the HTML document because it's difficult to maintain. So another way is inline CSS, internal CSS rather, internal CSS. To use internal CSS, you have to use the style tag, okay, within the head region of the HTML of your head, of the head elements here. Now the style elements within the head section of your HTML document, there where I highlighted here, you specify use the style tag. Okay, so within this style tag here now, okay, you define your CSS rule. So that means you have to have the selector, which element do you want to style. Let's say for instance I want to style this H3 element here. Okay, I specify H3. I have to reference the element by its name. So later on we'll look at CSS selector in detail. So but here I'm specifying the element, which is H3. Then what property of the element do I want to change using the CSS rule that will be specified within this declaration block? So let's say I want to change the color of the HTML element. Now the color property, I specify the color property separated with semicolon. Then what is the color value that I want to use? Let's say I want the color to be blue, for instance. Now, okay, then I have to terminate it with semicolon. This is a declaration. Okay, then after that, let's check it out in the browser. You could see the color has changed to what? Blue. So now let's say I want to increase the font size of that same element. You can just come down here, then specify, say, font size. That's the property to use. Then specify the value, let's say 56 px. Okay, so if you check it out again, we have the font has actually increased. Okay, so that's how to add inline CSS to internal CSS rather to HTML documents. This is great, but it's not efficient. Okay, because now imagine that you have multiple web pages that you want to apply the same CSS. That means you have to copy the same rule here onto those HTML documents, and it's also difficult to maintain. If I want to change the color, that means on other pages you have to do the same thing. Now it's difficult to maintain. That is where external CSS comes in now. Okay, so to use external CSS, you need to create the file called style.css. You can give it any name, but ensure it ends with .css. You can call it main.css, app.css. The choice is yours, but ensure it ends with .css. Now we've created the file, but nothing in it. So we need to link it up with our HTML documents. Okay, so now to link it up, we use a link tag of the HTML of HTML. So having specified the link tag, then within this href attribute, the value now will not be the file. That's the CSS file we just created. Say style. Ensure it's correctly spelled as you have written it here, else it might not actually give you the correct output as you expected it. Now we've linked the HTML element, but we've not written any CSS code within here now. So now let's say, for instance, I want to change the background property of this body element. Now I want to change the background color of this web page. So I will specify that on the body element. So I have to reference the body element within the CSS file that I've specified here. So body, just like body, then the declaration block. Then you also specify the properties that I want to change the background color. Let's say the color I want to change is color here now. So if you should check it out on our page, you see the background color has changed. So that is how to add external CSS to our HTML documents. For instance, if I have additional page now, let's say I have about.html here now. So let me just create a simple boilerplate. I call this one to h1 about page. So now for me to add the same style here now, all I just need to say use a link tag, link, then specify the file name, which is style.css. So if I open up this page, my browser, you see the same background property has been actually applied. So now if I edit this, now it's easier to maintain and easier to maintain. If I want to change the color, I just need to change in a single file, not in multiple pages as it is in a inline or internal or inline CSS. So that's just the way to add CSS to our HTML. In this tutorial series, we'll be looking at CSS. And what is CSS? CSS actually stands for Cascading